Hello there. I've got a question about the global power structure, and this question is, can the United States or will the United States ever break away from the global power structure? And there are different names that this structure kind of goes by. The most popular would probably be the New World Order. That seems to be the one that's promoted the most. And the question is there any way that the United States may be able to separate from that effort? All right, now what I explained in the video that I produced on the global power structure, just to kind of give a starting point to address questions like this, what I explained is that the global power structure is kind of a cooperative between different groups, between governments, between corporations, that it's a cooperative of individuals in a sense that changes a lot. And so could the United States as a whole separate itself really enough from all of these cooperatives, from all of these agreements? Could it separate enough so that it's not really a part of the global power structure, and that we could function kind of independently of the global power structure? Well, there are several different ways to view that. The first thing is that if we break away from the global power structure in that sense, if we do that, then we're not going to be involved in trade so much. That would be a reflected consequence of breaking away from the way things are right now. Is that there will be an experience of being isolated. We're not going to be involved in a lot of trade with other countries because we're not cooperating with everybody who's a part of the decision-making process. So if we wanted to do our own thing and not be influenced by these other groups, well, you're going to just find yourself doing your own thing. And the only way that you're going to be able to participate with other groups and with other people, with other countries, is if you produce something that that they want, if you have something to offer. Under those conditions, new agreements can be formed and new trade can be defined. But the United States no longer really produces a lot. This is happening in other countries. Other countries are producing things and we import those things. There is some production going on, but overall, if you look at the relationships in terms of trade, you'll see that we have a highly negative balance in terms of what we export versus what we import. So would the United States ever break away? It's unlikely that the decision makers, the people who are making decisions for the people of the United States, it's unlikely that they are going to make a decision to break away from the global power structure. What's more likely to happen is that the global power structure kind of disconnects from the United States. I'll give you an example. Consider the activity that's going on in Europe and in Asia, both North and South Asia and Central Asia. What you see is you see a breakup taking place presently, and a lot of the production that is taking place is being reorganized. New cooperative agreements are being made between different countries, such as China and Russia and India and Brazil, and a lot of other countries are joining in who produce things, who export things. And new agreements are being made with these other countries. And the focus of these agreements is to separate from the power structure of the United States. All right? What you will see is you will see everybody else separating from the United States power structure. Now, the primary means of which there is power, all right, or the primary power, the real power of the United States and their power structure has to do with the currency that is being used, the US dollar. The other countries are still using the US dollar in trade. And this is going to be changed. We are in the process of experiencing this change of moving away from the US dollar, at least from all these global agreements and the global power structure. Now, there are two steps involved in removing the use of the US dollar. There's two steps. The first step is to change the military influence and the military pressure that could be applied in different environments. Consider, for example, what happened recently with Afghanistan. The United States removed its military from Afghanistan. They no longer have a presence there. New agreements were made quickly between Afghanistan and China. At the same time, the U.S. military has been withdrawing from Saudi Arabia, and new agreements were made between Saudi Arabia and Russia, that Russia will be providing Saudi Arabia with a military instead of the United States providing Saudi Arabia with a military. All right, so the military agreements are going to take place first, because with the military being in a certain country, the military needs resources in order to function, in order to exist, because the military doesn't produce anything for trade. They don't produce anything. So they consume resources. In order to consume resources, they have to purchase these resources. So the military being present in other countries will need to purchase resources from those countries. Energy, food, labor, all right, things like that. Our military uses the dollar to purchase these resources that it needs in order to function. So it offers dollars in exchange for these resources, and then these countries, they then have these dollars that they need to use somehow, and so they use those for trade. When the military is removed from these countries, from Afghanistan, from Saudi Arabia, just to give a start, then new agreements are made, and they make new agreements with other militaries to use different currencies. All right? And this is the deal. This is the process. So once the military gets reorganized, all right, and what you see happening in Europe right now between Europe and Asia and the potential war that's unfolding, potential for World War III, you'll see a reorganization of the militaries. And then after the war, if there's a war that takes place after the war is over, then there will be a reorganization of contracts and agreements based on another currency system. And so there is a lot that's going on in order to unwind all of these military agreements. And then what happens after that is a reorganization of all the business agreements based on another currency. And that's the breakaway. The breakaway is that these other countries are no longer going to be using the US dollar as the global reserve currency or as the currency of trade. That's what's taking place at the moment. And when this happens, then it's not the United States that's breaking away from the global power structure. It's going to be the global power structure that breaks away from the United States and just kind of leaves the United States into, well, there's going to have to be a reorganization here also, because they're not going to be sending their stuff for dollars anymore, not so much. And so when that happens, then the dollars don't buy anything. Well, then what are we going to do? All right, because our power structure is only influential. It's only possible because of the dollar. For example, consider the federal government. What is the power of the federal government? Well, it has the power of sending people money. That's what it does. All right? It sends people money. And there are courts, and there's the FBI, and there's other enforcement agencies. But the real power behind these agencies and behind the federal government is the U.S. dollar. That the U.S. dollar is accepted by other countries for trade. When the other countries no longer do business in U.S. dollars, but they use their own currencies, or they go back to a gold standard, and it appears that that's what's happening, is that the global power structure is reorganizing under a gold standard again. Well, when this happens, then the federal government no longer has anything to offer. They can continue to mail out checks. They can offer dollars because they just create those out of nothing. Or they take some of it from the people, of course, through taxation. But most of the money is just simply created out of nothing. And when that currency no longer purchases enough stuff, all right, there comes a critical moment of some kind when you just can't get enough stuff with it. It's no longer going to have any real value. Then the federal government really has nothing to offer anymore. And so the federal government is no longer a part of the power structure, all right? In which case there is a high probability that there will be a breakup within the United States, where the United States has to reorganize based on what states are cooperating with one another in terms of resources and trade. Okay, and you could easily see the United States break up into maybe 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 different countries because the federal government no longer has anything to offer. And yet the people themselves still have to function. We still have to live our lives. We still have to figure out how we're going to get the resources that we need. And so this becomes a local dynamic. It becomes a local decision-making process more than a national decision-making process, because the national decision-making process is so strongly connected to international trade. But when that breaks down, then these decisions end up having to be more localized, just because there isn't anybody else to have that kind of power and influence. There's nobody else who has anything to offer anymore when the currency changes. These are some possibilities as to what you would most likely see, in my opinion, with regards to the United States disconnecting from the power structure. All right, that I would say that it's not so much a matter of us breaking away from the power structure. It's more a matter of we're going to be just left behind, because as a country, we really don't have anything to offer anymore. Not enough. There isn't enough to offer, per se. Those things that this country does have to offer, there probably will be agreements that are made. And when those agreements are made, then what happens? Well, then these things are sent to these other countries. So the people here will find it difficult to obtain the things that are manufactured and produced in this country, because they're going to be sent out to other countries in order to engage in contracts and engage in trade to be able to get those things that those other countries are able to provide. You'll see a reduction of things that are available, and this is how it would likely play out. There will just simply be a lot less stuff available to buy, because there are very few people who have anything to offer in exchange for the real stuff. All right, this is a high probability. I can't say that this is exactly how it's going to play out. I can only say that this is my opinion concerning how this disconnect will unfold. All right, I hope this helps.